Project control processes.
Have you ever wondered, how do I measure the progress and performance of my project? And how do I identify the project's deviations? In this topic, you will learn the importance of the processes that control a project. First, as a project manager, you must be aware that throughout the project, your plan can change. However, if deviations arise despite following good practices, you, as a project manager, will have to review the change control deviation and subsequently update it. These groups of processes are in charge of monitoring and controlling the project's work, making an integrated change control, validating and controlling the project's scope, and controlling the chronogram, costs, quality, communications, risks, acquisitions, and stakeholder participation. Finally, two kinds of important changes in the project will be reviewed: unexpected changes in the scope and changes in the baseline.
Role.
Project management.
Tasks.
Performs an integrated change control, intervening from the beginning of the project up to its end. The project manager, in collaboration with the team, determines the actions required to ensure that the project's performance is up to expectations. It is the person in charge of approving or rejecting each of the documented change requests. This task can also be performed by the sponsor.
Role.
Project's management team.
Tasks.
Uses the expert judgment to interpret the information provided by control processes.
Role.
Project stakeholders.
Tasks.
Any stakeholder involved in the project can request changes.
Role.
Change Control Board, CCB.
Tasks.
It is a group that is formally established and responsible for reviewing, evaluating, approving, delaying or rejecting changes to the project, as well as registering or communicating such decisions.
Project's control processes.
Control includes the determination of preventive or corrective actions or the modification of action plans and their follow-up to determine if the actions taken allowed the performance problem to be solved, PMI, 2013. The monitoring and controlling process have the purpose of observing performances and recommending corrective actions, as well as controlling the project's changes to scope, approve, and formalize updates that result in the project's new baseline.
The group of monitoring and controlling processes. This continuous monitoring provides to the project's team knowledge on the project's state and allows them to identify areas that require more attention. The group of monitoring and controlling processes does not only monitor and control work that is being done inside a group of processes, but it also monitors and controls the global effort dedicated to the project, PMI, 2013.
Monitoring and controlling the project's work. This process gives follow-ups, reviews, and informs about the progress to fulfill the performance goals defined in the project management plan.
Undertaking the integrated change control. This process analyzes all the change requests made to deliverables, process assets of the organization, project document, and project management plans. They are approved and managed, and corresponding decisions are communicated.
Validating the scope. It is the process where we formalize the approval of the project's deliverables that have been completed.
Controlling the scope. It is a process that monitors the project's state and the product's scope, managing changes to the scope baseline as well.
Controlling the chronogram. It is the process of monitoring the state of the project's activities to update its progress and manage any changes to the baseline of the chronogram to achieve the plan.
Controlling costs. This process is in charge of monitoring the state of the project to update its costs and manage any changes to cost baseline.
Controlling quality. It is a process that monitors and records the results of the execution of quality activities to evaluate performance and recommend necessary changes.
Controlling communications. It is the process in charge of monitoring and controlling communications throughout the project's life cycle to ensure that the information needs of the stakeholders are met.
Controlling risks. This process is in charge of implementing the risk response plans, give the identified risks follow-ups, monitor any residual risks, identify new risks, and evaluate the effectiveness of the risk management process throughout the project.
Controlling acquisitions. It is the process that manages the relations for acquisitions, monitors the execution of contracts, and makes changes and corrections to contracts depending on the case.
Controlling the stakeholders' participation. Its main function is monitoring the general relations of the project's stakeholders and adjusting the strategies and plans to involve the stakeholders.
The group of monitoring and controlling processes is responsible for controlling changes and recommending corrective or preventive actions to anticipate possible issues, monitoring the project's activities, comparing them to the project management plan, and with the baseline for measuring the project's performance, and influencing the factors that could escape integrated change control or configuration management, so that only approved changes are implemented. Larson and Gray, 2011. Mention that controlling is the process of comparing tangible performance with the plan to identify deviations, evaluate the alternative courses of action that are available, and take possible corrective actions. The control steps for measuring and evaluating a project's performance.
Methods for the analysis of variance. To evaluate the current state of a project through the cost system and the acquired value program, we need three data elements: planned costs of the programmed work, plan value or PV, the budgeted costs of the finished work, earned value or EV, and the actual cost of the finished work, actual cost or AC. From this data, the scheduled variance, SV, and cost variance, CV, are calculated in each reporting period. A positive variance indicates a desirable condition, while a negative variance suggests that problems or changes have happened. Larson and Gray, 2011. To see a control and variance chart. Cost variance tells us if the finished work costs more or less than what was planned at any point in the project's life. If it was not separated from the labor and materials, cost variance must be carefully reviewed to isolate the cause from the labor or materials, or both. A scheduled variance presents a general evaluation of all the work packages in the project that have been scheduled to date. It is important to mention that the scheduled variance does not contain any critical path information. In other words, it measures progress in costs rather than in time units.
Unexpected changes to the scope. According to Larson and Gray, 2011, big changes in scope are easily identified. The little modifications are the ones that eventually add up and become important scope changes that can cause issues. These little modifications are known in this field as unexpected changes to the scope. These types of changes are common at the beginning of projects, especially the ones for the development of new products. The client's needs for additional characteristics, new technology, and bad design suppositions represent pressure for the scope's variations. The key to handling unexpected changes to the scope is proper change management.
Changes to the baseline. Some changes can be very beneficial for the project's results, but the ones that have a negative effect are the ones we wish to avoid. Consider that changes that occur during the project's life cycle are inevitable and will definitely occur. These changes can come from inner or outer sources.
As a future project manager, you must be careful not to use changes to the baseline to disguise poor performance in past or current work. To see an example of changes in the baseline of a project.
Documents and software tools in project control.
A progress report is like taking a picture of the project at a specific point in time, using an acquired value to measure the schedule and cost performance. Measuring the acquired value starts at a work package level. Larson and Gray, 2011.